Well, we've known that there's a big potential for oil and gas exploration through the across the country, but particularly in terms of oil in the Weald Basin, which is the area that stretches roughly from Winchester across towards Gatwick up to the M25 and down to the coast at Chichester. But there's been a long history of oil and gas exploration in this area. We as a company produce oil and gas from around 20 sites across that area. Around 40 million barrels have been recovered to date.
So you're already using more conventional techniques to produce oil and gas in the southeast of England, with people who apparently hardly even noticing.
Exactly.
Caroline, Lucas doesn't sound quite so bad, does it? What have you got to be afraid of?
Well, what no one's talked about so far is the impact on climate change. It seems to be particularly perverse to be searching after yet more hard-to-reach fossil fuels when experts are telling us we need to leave up to 80% of known fossil fuel reserves in the ground if we're to have any hope of avoiding 2 degrees warming. It's only a month since we've had those 2 big UN Intergovernmental Panel reports on climate change saying that the urgency to shift to renewable energies is greater than ever if we're to avoid very dangerous climate change, and that's the direction we should be going in.
But there's already an awful lot of urgency that millions of householders feel about getting their energy bills down. Businesses want their power costs to come down. And in the US, fracking has transformed that. Energy prices have fallen through the floor.
Well, let me address that head on, because even the boss of Quadrilla has said that fracking in Britain wouldn't reduce energy prices. Lord Stern has called it baseless economics, and that's because here in the UK, if we frack in the UK, we don't actually use that gas or oil in the UK. It gets sold on European markets at the going price. That's very different from the States, where because it's a much bigger country and they're less locked into those bigger world markets, they use their own gas and oil as they frack it. So, you know, even the experts, even the, you know, people who are in the forefront of the fracking ideology are saying actually that it's not going to lead to higher prices.
Andrew,
so if you want higher prices, you need to go down the renewable route.
It's not going to help us then. What's the point?
Let's just try and separate out the 2 different issues that Caroline just spoke about, and she rightly spoke about both of them. Firstly, in terms of climate change, if we are going to use renewables from anywhere, if we're going to use oil and gas from anywhere, we are better using it in a highly regulated market close to the place of consumption. So the cost of transporting oil and gas in terms of the climate impact of doing that is very, very considerable. Secondly, into that mix, if you're going to use any fossil fuels, you need to be using gas rather than coal. Coal is the enemy in this equation, and I'm sure Caroline would agree with me in that position in terms of trying to achieve a climate change.
Caroline.
Well, I certainly agree that gas is better than coal, but that's not the question that we're confronting here, because if we go for more fracked gas here, that coal doesn't stay in the ground, it simply gets sold somewhere else, and the impact on the climate is still the same. But what we should be talking about is the difference between a greener energy future based on renewable energies and energy efficiency, lots of jobs, lower fuel bills.
Now that people's bills are extremely high, it's right now that we have to confront these issues, and right now renewables are only 4% in this country, so don't we need the mix?
No, can I just answer that one? Because it just feels such an irony that exactly that time when, in fact, onshore wind, for example, is about to become much more comparable with the fossil fuels in terms of cost, at exactly that time, the government's introducing a moratorium on onshore wind. Why is it doing that? Because the fossil fuel companies are terrified that renewables are actually going to take their space. There's a huge battle going on here.
Isn't the point, though, Andrew Austin, that actually, for all the reasons we've discussed and we saw in that film, it's just not going to happen here?
Okay,
people don't want it.
There are different issues into this mix. I completely agree with Caroline in terms of the importance of climate change targets. The 2-degree target is absolutely imperative. Prior to founding IGas, I was involved in the renewable energy industry. I ran solar panel manufacturing facilities in the United States. I've built solar farms. I completely understand that agenda and completely embrace it. If, however, into that mix, in the same way as has happened in the United States, gas has supplanted coal, then you're still going to need gas in the mix. And if you're going to use gas at all, you're better using it domestically.
Could I come
in
back
terms
on
of the price argument, which has been raised here, 2 or 3 shale gas sites across the country will not bring down the price of gas for the retail consumer. But if we have a material shale gas industry in this country, by which I mean around 100 sites across the country, which is a fraction of the space that's used for other particular land uses, including renewable energies, then we will start getting to a point where we can have a downward effect on prices. But until we have a material industry, that won't happen.
Okay.
But the climate change gains in the meantime are more important.
If you've got a material industry based on shale in this country, then you're not going to get your emissions down.
Okay,
and
I'm
therefore
afraid
we are going to be on the
both
catastrophic
of you,
course to climate
we are
change.
out of time on what's a very complicated issue, but will be fascinating to see how it develops. Caroline, Lucas and Andrew Austin, thanks very much indeed for being with us.